He went down to bring her back. That is the whole of it. His wife was dead, the first death this book records, and he would not have it. So he went down after her. The Kojiki gives him one sentence of hope. She is standing behind a closed door in the dark, and she asks him for one thing. Do not look. He looks. And then this book, which has moved at the pace of centuries, moves at the pace of a man running for his life. He throws down the vine in his hair, then his comb, then 3 pieces of fruit. And at the top of a slope between the living and the dead, he and the woman he built the world with say the last words they will ever say to each other. Those words are the reason anyone dies at all. 3 things before we start. None of them give anything away. First, Yomi. Unhear the word hell. Yomi is not punishment, no court, no sentence, no judge. Only the land the dead are in, reached by a pass. The Kojiki describes it the way you would describe a house at night. A door, a hall, someone waiting inside. Second, kegare. It gets translated as impurity, which makes it sound like sin. It is closer to dirt. You can pick it up without doing anything wrong. And because it is dirt, it washes off. Hold on to that, because this story ends with a man deciding he needs to bathe. Third, the comb. In old Japan, a comb worn in the hair was not only a grooming tool, it could also hold power. You saw one in the dragon story. Tonight, it becomes a torch, and then a weapon. A land that is not hell, a stain that is not sin, and a comb that is not a comb. This retelling is based directly on the Kojiki, Japan's oldest chronicle, compiled in the year 712, with some moments dramatized for a modern audience. I am a Japanese storyteller, and I return to the Japanese sources to bring their words and their world into English. The Kojiki does not describe the way down. It gives him 1 line. He went after her, and then he is already there in the dark, standing in front of a hall. And she comes out to the door to meet him. Not through it, to it. That distinction is the entire act. He says the thing he came to say, the way a man says a thing he has rehearsed on the way down. Beloved, the land you and I were making, we have not finished it. Come back with me. And she answers. And her answer is not no. It is a bitter thing, she says, that you did not come sooner. I have already eaten at the hearth of this place. That is the sentence that closes the door, and it does not sound like it. She has eaten food cooked on the fire of the dead, and that rule turns up in more than one part of the world. Eat there, and you belong there. But she keeps going, and this is the part that gets lost when people retell this story. Still, that you came here for me is a fearful and precious thing. I want to go back. Let me go and argue it with the gods of this place. And then the only instruction she gives him. While I do not look at me. She turned and went back into the hall, and he did what she asked. He stood outside a closed door in the dark, and he waited. The Kojiki does not say how long. It says only that it was long. Long enough that the waiting became the thing that was happening. He waited, and then he stopped waiting. He wore his hair the way men wore it then, gathered into 2 bunches, one at each side of the head, a comb pushed into each. He took the comb out of the left one. He broke off the thick tooth at the end of it. He set that single tooth alight. One tooth of one comb. That is the entire light he brings into the land of the dead. And it tells you he had not planned this. A man who means to break a promise brings a torch. He went in. The Kojiki does not look away here, and I am not going to dwell on it. Her body had been in the ground. It had gone the way bodies go, and the book says so plainly, in words Japanese schoolchildren still find shocking. And there was something else. 8 thunders had come to be upon her, set across the 8 regions of a body. The book names all 8. I am not going to, because the number is the point. She had become a landscape with weather in it. He was terrified and he ran. And behind him, in the dark, she said the line this whole night turns on. She did not say, "You broke your promise." She said, "You have shamed me." Because that is what happened. She had asked for time and for privacy, while she went to argue for her own return, and he had brought a light in to look at what she had become. Whatever was going to be decided in that hall was not going to be decided now. She sent the hags of Yomi after him. What happens now is the strangest chase in Japanese literature, and it is strange because of what he uses. The hags were gaining on him, so he pulled the black vine out of his hair and threw it behind him. And where it landed, wild grapes came up out of the ground. The hags stopped to eat them. He ran. They came again. So he took the comb out of the right bunch of his hair, broke off its teeth, and threw them behind him. And bamboo shoots came up. The hags stopped to pull them and eat them. He ran. Notice what he is throwing. Not weapons. He is throwing the things he is wearing. He is stripping himself as he runs, and every piece of him that hits the ground turns into food. So she sent the real thing, the 8 thunders and 1,500 soldiers of the dead. Now he drew his sword. And here the Kojiki gives a detail so specific you can see it. He ran and he swung the blade behind his back as he went. Not turning, not fighting, just keeping something moving between himself and whatever was closing in. That is how he reached the bottom of the slope, the pass between the 2 countries. The Kojiki calls it the flat slope of Yomi, and the slope is exactly right. This is not a wall between the living and the dead. It is a hill. It can be walked. At the foot of it, 3 peaches were growing. He waited for them there, and he struck at them with all 3, and the pursuers turned and fled. The thunders, all 1,500, and then he stopped in the middle of the worst night of his life and spoke to the fruit. He gave it a name, Okamuzumi, and asked it for a favor, not for himself. He said, "When the people under heaven fall into hardship and grief, help them the way you have just helped me." He is standing at the border of death, arranging help for the living world against a trouble that has not happened yet. And then, last of all, she came herself. He did the only thing left. At the pass, there was a boulder. The Kojiki says it would take 1,000 men to shift it. And he put his hands on it, dragged it into the gap, and sealed the road between the two countries. And they stood on either side of it, and they spoke. This is often called the oldest divorce in Japanese literature. The Kojiki uses an obscure formula here, widely read as a declaration of separation. But listen to how each of them starts. She says, "Beloved husband." He says, "Beloved wife." They are still calling each other that. On either side of a stone, neither of them will ever move again. In the last conversation they will ever have, they use the words they used on the day they built the first island. And then they use those words to threaten each other. "Beloved husband, if you do this, then every day I will take 1,000 lives from the people of your country. Beloved wife, if you do that, then every day I will build 1,500 huts for women to give birth in." And the Kojiki, in one flat line, tells you what that arrangement produced. This is why 1,000 people die every day and 1,500 are born. That is the Japanese answer to the oldest question there is. Death is not a punishment here. No sin causes it. Death is a term in a settlement between two people who loved each other, could not agree, and had to divide something up. And notice the numbers. He did not match her. He went 500 higher. Then he turned and walked up the slope, and the first thing he said when he reached open air had nothing to do with grief. He said, "I have been in a foul and hideous land. I must wash myself." 3 things you only get from inside Japan. 1. The peach he threw. That fruit gets a name in the book, and it has a job outside the book. Peaches were treated as fruit that drives off what should not be there, and that reaches well beyond this one story. At a site in Nara, in a pit beside the remains of a very large building, archaeologists found roughly 2,800 peach stones, dated to around the 2nd or 3rd century. That is nearly 500 years before anyone wrote the Kojiki down. Nobody can tell you for certain what those peaches were for, but when the book has a god throw 3 at the dead and then stop to thank them, it is not inventing a symbol. It is reaching for one that was already old. And if you watched the last episode, this is where the boy in the peach gets his weapon. 2. You can go to the slope. The Kojiki does not leave it in myth. It says the pass of Yomi is in the land of Izumo, and it names the slope. That slope has a traditional site today in Shimane, in the west of the country, and there is a stone marker standing at it. Nobody can prove it is the spot, but the entrance to the land of the dead has an address, and you can go and stand at it. 3. Look at what she gets called afterwards. She goes down as a wife, and she comes out of that chapter as the great goddess of Yomi, with a second name besides, taken from the fact that she caught up with him. The stone that blocked the road is given names of its own separately. She is not written as a monster. She is written as a great deity. The land she could not leave is the land her name now carries. Next time, that man walks out of the underworld covered in the worst thing there is and goes down to a river mouth to wash. And what happens is not cleaning. Gods come off him, out of his clothes, out of the water. And the last 3 are the sun, the moon, and the storm. If you want these stories the way Japan tells them, subscribe.